Hello creeps! Andy here. I recently asked you guys on Instagram what kind of videos that you guys would like to see. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to leave them down below. But somebody suggested kind of like an intro to horror books for beginner readers. And I had done one of these videos a long time ago, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, I have so many more books to recommend. So it did seem like a good idea to kind of revisit this topic. I selected a bunch of books and I've separated them into different categories for readers. I think from the easiest, and then they progressively get a little bit, not harder, but I'll explain each category as we go. But anyways, I tried to pick a variety of different subjects, like subgenres of horror, so there's hopefully something for everybody. And I've also selected a large variety of books for people that maybe aren't readers at all and want to get into horror, people who are just looking for some recommendations, or people who maybe are seasoned readers but don't necessarily read the genre of horror, and so they kind of want to dip their toes in. And so yeah, I've separated the books. Let's get into it. First, we're going to start with, I think, just like the fun, easy category, and I don't think anybody is going to be very surprised by who I talk about, because that, of course, is Darcy Coates. Yes, I'm talking about Darcy Coates again in another video. I just love her books. So these, I think, are the easiest, most fun books that I've read in relation to the horror genre. Every single chapter ends with a page turner. You just have to keep reading them. They're impossible to put down. They are addicting. I'm warning you now, they're addicting. So I have gotten a few comments that's like, oh my gosh, I picked up my first Darcy Coates book because you recommended it and now I'm on my 12th. Like that is exactly what happened to me. They're very, very addicting. They're also extremely fast paced. So you feel like you read the books. I mean, I think I've read most of her books in like a day or two because they're just impossible to put down. So yeah, it makes you feel like you're reading really quickly, and yeah, you devour her work. It's impossible not to. So anyways, I have a few suggestions here. I think most of her books are probably in this category. They're super, super mild too, so you don't have to worry about anything being too horror, blood and gutsy. No, not really with her work. I'll give you a few to avoid if you don't want anything too intense. But this is the first one that I picked up. It's called Voices in the Snow, and this is part of her Black Winter novel series. It's kind of like an apocalyptic scenario where there are these dead zones and nobody knows what happens, and when you go in you don't come out. And so it's about this one girl who arrives in the woods to find these like monsters are trying to kill her, and she meets up with someone and they try to survive the monsters together. This book has so much of everything too, so I think it's also a really good place to start if you've read other genres before and just maybe not horror, because there's romance in here, there's definitely adventure in here, there's horror, there's a little bit of everything. So absolutely fun read. This is the book that started it all. This book started my obsession with Darcy Coates. But I also think that any of her haunting books are very, very mild too. This one happens to be one of my favorites, The Haunting of Blackwood. I also like The Haunting of Leigh Harker, but this is just about a girl who buys a house that used to be owned by a serial killer and is supposedly haunted, and so you go on her journey with her figuring out that the house is in fact haunted. And it's creepy, it's fun, but it is fairly mild. The same with all of her books. Same with these Gravekeeper series books. This is The Whispering Dead. It's about a girl who wakes up in the woods being chased by men. She doesn't remember her past, but all she knows is that she can speak to the dead. So yeah, just super entertaining books. I would just stay away from Dead of Winter. That one is definitely more bloody, and Hunted. I think those are two of the more bloodier, more intense, maybe even Gallows Hill. But other than that, yeah, a blast. Super fun to read. And yeah, just honestly great for anybody who just wants to get into reading. Specifically horror, but they're not all that gory or bloody. So I think anybody who just wants to read and picks up one of her books will absolutely enjoy it. Now let's move to the next category. These are actually both YA horror novels. And I don't particularly love YA, but I did enjoy these enough that I feel like I should recommend them. The first one here is Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar, and this is about a girl who moves to a small town. This creepy clown is like the mascot of the town, and when they go to have a party in the cornfields, a clown comes and tries to murder them. This honestly reads like a PG-13 slasher movie. So if you love light horror, like watching it, then I think you'll enjoy this. There's definitely some underlying political messages and stuff in this book, but I don't think that it's dwelled on enough that it makes it like a political read, you know what I mean? But there definitely is some stuff under the surface. But otherwise, yeah, if you like PG-13 horror movies, like just fun little teen slashers, I think that you'll really enjoy this one. I thought that it was pretty fun. The next one I have here is Here There Are Monsters by Amalinda Berube. This one I actually found at the dollar store, sounded creepy, bought it, and I rather enjoyed it. It's about a family that moves to a small town. At its core, it's really a story about sisters, but the older sister is kind of pulling apart from the younger sister. You know, she's getting older and making friends and kind of doing her own thing. And the little sister ends up becoming obsessed with the woods and saying and doing really creepy things. The first half is so creepy and fun, and I really enjoyed it. But the second half does take more of like a mystical turn, and you guys know that's not really my type of style of reading. I don't really like anything too magical, but for anybody who does, this is the book for you. And it's so well written. I was really blown away by her writing in this, and in fact I do have another book of hers that I haven't gotten to yet, but it also sounds pretty creepy. But yeah, if you just want like an introduction to horror, this is a fun little YA story. Okay, next up, this category is more just like quick, easy reads. And the first one I have is Stephen King's The Mist. This is more of a novella. You know, it's like a little over 200 pages. It's about this mist that rolls into this town and there are monsters in it. But it's also very interesting because it's not just man versus nature, it's man versus man too. So you kind of get to see how these people react and how some of them slowly lose their mind in this mist. I think it's a fantastic read, and it's different enough from the movie that I think it's worth reading too. I prefer the ending to the movie more, I will say, but still an interesting read, and still, you know, it's 200 pages, super easy to get through. The next one is Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in This Castle. And yeah, this book is a freaking blast. It's also just weird to read, like the little girl in it. I think her name's Mary Cat. And she's just weird, man. She just does weird stuff. And you're like, what are you doing? Why are you burying stuff? Why are you like, she's just strange. And it's about these two sisters that live in this castle, I guess. And their family, their parents have passed away. And you don't know why at first, and it's slowly revealed to you what happened, and the town just kind of despises them. It's a very interesting read. It made me feel a way that no other book has made me feel reading this. Yeah, it is a little bit more like dense than some of the other books that I'm recommending, but it's also just an easy read, and it's not crazy bloody or gory or anything, but my favorite Shirley Jackson book. My next category is for people who enjoy reading but maybe haven't shifted to the horror genre yet. And so for these first two, these are both Simone St. James books, and they're both about girls trying to solve a past crime, and so you go back and forth from the past to the present. There's also supernatural elements in here, which I think is why it's not just a thriller book. But if you enjoy thrillers but you kind of want to switch over to horror, these are such a great place to start, because at their core they are thrillers, and they do have a lot of those same plot points that go into creating a thriller book. But these are such a blast. I enjoyed both of these so much. And the next one is Stephen King's Salem's Lot. This is a vampire story with very little vampires in here. Like it's really not all that bloody and gory, but I will say that the writing style, the descriptions of the town, the character development in here is just such a testament to Stephen King's ability as a writer that I really would recommend this to anybody who just loves reading in general. Obviously, quite a chunky book. It's over 600 pages. If you don't read that much, maybe not the first book that you want to pick up, but if you do enjoy reading and you want something that's like very character driven, I would suggest this one, especially, you know, we're heading into October. I think this would be a good one to pick up. Okay, our next category is maybe for maybe people who are a little bit more, I don't want to say seasoned readers, because like anybody can read these, but I think there's just a little bit more to analyze in these texts versus some of the other ones. So I want to start off with The Yellow Wallpaper. This is actually a short story, and I can't even remember who it's by. It's by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And this short story is one of those short stories that just sticks with you. I think about this story all the time, and it's not, I don't even know if it's considered technically a horror story or not, but it is creepy and messed up. You can't just read it surface level, but there are a lot of things to analyze in this story. It's about a woman she's put in this, I think it's like a cottage to help with her mental state, but she slowly goes mad, and it shows like how her husband treats her, how the society treats her, and it's a really interesting work to analyze. It's very creepy, and it's one that again sticks with you. This is kind of a stand-in for all Greek tragedies, but this is just Sophocles' The Oedipus cycle, and I highly recommend, if you want to get started in horror, why not start where it started? I'm just convinced that Greek tragedies were the start of modern day horror. Some of them are pretty intense, and they're messed up. I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty messed up. But they read like plays, and they're not like crazy gory or anything like that, but the plots are, some of them are more messed up than like our modern day books. I revisit Oedipus Rex and Antigone a lot. Honestly, if you just find any Greek tragedy, I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised. But that one I wanted to include in here just because it doesn't read like a regular story. So if you don't like other styles of writing, like reading plays, then you might not want to pick that one up. The next one I just read this year, and that was Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. And this book is fantastic. Oh my gosh, I loved it. Again, another vampire book, and one of the first ones ever written. This was first published in 1871. It's, I think, the third vampire novel that was ever written. So yeah, fantastic read, super fun, very, very atmospheric. It is a blast to read. The last one that I want to recommend to you is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Now this one isn't the easiest read. It can be dense, definitely. And it's not how you would envision the typical Frankenstein mindless monster. Frankenstein's monster being mindless. Frankenstein's monster actually learns about humanity through literature, and so he's actually very well spoken and almost poetic. Yeah, this book is really, really interesting, and definitely one of those works that you could read a million times and sort of analyze different aspects of it. It was also, I believe, written during the Romantic period, so there's a lot of description of that beautiful landscape and things like that. So yeah, not the easiest book to get through, not the toughest either, but it is a little bit more dense than a typical horror story, but definitely worth checking out if you do like literature, and you know, especially if you like classic literature and you read that a lot, you might want to pick this one up for your first horror read. It does feel very much so in that realm of classic books in the literary canon. So fantastic, beautifully written. So anyways, I hope this video has helped somebody in some way. I know a lot of the people who watch these videos are interested in horror already, but I do get comments sometimes about people who enjoy books but aren't necessarily well versed in the horror genre. So I hope that helped. I just thought of another one actually that I read this year that was pretty good. It's by Ray Russell. It's called The Case Against Satan by Ray Russell. It was published in '62, and it's kind of a possession book, but it doesn't even really focus on possession, and I think it's just a really interesting read. Super easy to read, super short, but I think again, like a little bit to analyze in there and a little bit deeper of meaning than just a possession story. But I think also a book that inspired a lot of possession stories, that if you're interested in them but maybe a little creeped out by possession in general, that might be a good place to start. Okay, I feel good about this list. I hope this video has helped you in some way. If you guys have ideas of books that you maybe got you started in the horror genre, please feel free to leave them down below. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know of any videos that you're interested in seeing in the future, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.